So, Chris, tell me about your learning to fly experience.
It was short and intense, and it continues. And that was I think one of the big surprises about getting into it, which was it's an everyday affair. Just it never stops. The price one might pay for not keeping up on their knowledge and their proficiency is quite steep.
So, you started rather late in life. What is it that caused you to finally go over the top and start taking lessons and go all the way?
Yeah, I was 49 when I was introduced. I started my first lessons right before my 50th birthday. John Travolta, a chance meeting with John Travolta. He was gracious enough to invite me and my family down to his place in Florida, and I saw this plane that I didn't even know existed. He took me up in it, and when you fall in love, you get bit by the bug. I got bit by the flight love bug, I guess, and that was it, man.
Yeah.
One of the coolest experiences that I had was when I soloed. I texted an airplane buddy of mine, flies for the airlines, and Travolta, who got me into it. And both of them were over the moon. They were so excited, and I realized from their responses that these guys were reliving that moment in my triumph. And then, I texted them when I got my pilot's license. And it was not quite so much. They're like, oh, yeah, that's great. And then my IFR ticket, which to me was the end-all, be-all. And they're like, yeah, fantastic. I found it really funny because they both relived that moment when they took off by themselves. They truly got their wings. It was great.
Yeah, clearly it's one thing that every pilot will remember always and is always happy to share when you get an opportunity to tell somebody about your solo. Yeah, no doubt about it. So you had a Saratoga at one point, is that right? And then now you've moved to the Eclipse. What was that transition like?
Yeah, I started out, obviously in a trainer, and a little Cessna 172, and I just kept going. I'll never fly this type of aircraft. So I actually got my private in a Saratoga, and then within 2 years, I had the Eclipse, and that's just how it went.
What was the transition like? I mean, that's a pretty big step, particularly for a relatively low-time pilot moving into a twin jet. How's that go?
How was it? It was trepidatious, a lot of sweat-induced studying and flying and training. But I was really determined. I think being an older guy with a family, I always took every step cautiously and, always weighing the risk factors. So, I consider myself a pretty safe and prudent guy and pilot. But, just recently, I hadn't flown. I didn't have the opportunity to fly for a couple months. And, I called up a co-pilot, had him fly with me. I just did this again because I love flying at night. I just don't like flying alone at night. So, I always do that. I always cover my ass.
So what advice would you have for others who maybe kind of get this bit by the bug, as you say, as an adult and want to make that transition? What advice would you give them?
What advice would I give? Number one, it's like anything that you want to learn, like an instrument or anything like that. The moments of frustration are many, but the rewards are far exceed and far outweigh any frustrations you might have. I mean, it was so rewarding to get my IFR ticket. I hadn't studied that hard since I was in college, and I appreciated that. I think we don't have those opportunities as we get older to confront that. And what we do, we learn about ourselves. And it was a really, it's been a very deep, a far deeper and meaningful journey than I really ever thought that it would be. So, I would just say it's worth it. That's all I would say.
So what's it like flying out here in California? I mean, the airspace is really complicated. You're flying a fast jet now.
Yeah.
It's what's that like? How do you keep up with it?
Well, it's funny. What's it like to fly out here? I came out of New York, so it was just, it's not like,
weather's better.
There you go. That's all it is. I don't have to worry about freezing levels as much. But truly, flying out of New York airspace into LA airspace, and training around New York airspace, which I broke, by the way, and I paid a small price, but those are the things that you do while you're learning. Yeah, LA actually was really kind of imposing, but I figured it out. The tower and route system, that was all. I'd never even heard that term, so that was kind of cool. You just well, look, flying a jet also, I always plug myself into the system, so that makes it a little easier.
It does. So where do you like to go? How do you use the airplane? What kind of airports do you like to go to?
I've flown all over. I really appreciate the middle of the country because it's just easy and not as hectic. They don't bring you down low, too far out from the airport. I actually like seeing these places that I would never see in a million years. I like to talk to the people. I always do that. It's kind of cool to hear their stories and just their point of view on things. But I usually do it for business, some family stuff, and my business is kind of cool. I was in Baton Rouge, Cincinnati, Columbus. I just flew in from Savannah. I'm flying back. I'll fly up to DC. I get to Utah for Sundance. Sounds pretentious, but that's just a fact of life.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I do.
And how's the pilot community treat Chris Meloni or Detective Stabler? Do you get recognized a lot? And when pilots recognize you, what do they say? How do they react?
No, every once in a while, yeah. I'll get the eyebrow lifted. But when you're up there in the air, everyone's anonymous. It's just do you know your stuff and are you communicating clearly, and everything will be fine.
Yeah. What's next for you? Every pilot, always got the next milestone, next rating, next airplane, something like that. What's next for you?
That's a good. My next. I think my next is to get. I'm RVSM for the States, but I want to get it for the Caribbean and for Mexico, Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
So planning some island flying?
Yeah, we're actually. We're going to be spending a little more time in the Dominican Republic.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
How has flying changed your life?
How has flying changed my life? How has flying changed my life? Well, I'll say this, the whole thing about flying, for me, has been, as I said before, the whole thing has been, from day one, getting back into something, having to immerse myself into something, then on the backside of all that hard work, getting something that is almost surreal. It's, one of my friends called it a time machine, someone else called it a flying carpet, and you get to experience life from an absolutely unique and different perspective than 95% of the people. It's a small thing, but it was really profound for me. The first time flying into Burbank and not having a side view angle like you do in a commercial airplane, but having that front cockpit window and that airport opening up as you turn, onto final. I mean, it's those small things where you go, wow, that was phenomenal. So, you get these tiny little highs. You also have, a really sense of freedom, a really great sense of, you want to go to these tiny out-of-the-way places. Sure, you don't have to go to San Francisco to get to Napa, I'll be flying to Savannah. I don't have to go to Atlanta to get to, I'm going to go to Savannah on my time when I want to. I appreciate that freedom and